Thank you. Thank you to Northern Kentucky University. In fact, this is the first university that we have come to talk about our plan. I think it's one of the things that probably everybody now agrees is a problem, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. Kids are winding up with a lot of debt. The average debt's about $29,000 for a college student. Interestingly, I saw the other day that about 25% of kids, college kids, graduates, go on to graduate school, but half of the debt is actually for the ones who've gone to graduate school. So there's really a disproportionate part of this. In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday who had a spouse who had $200,000 in debt. I think she'd gone to graduate school. So graduate school is a big part of this. But trying to figure out how to get people, the ability to pay for this is a challenge. Now, there are two sides to it. We do a lot of help. In fact, I spoke with a college president recently who says for those who live at the poverty level, there's lots of grants out there, and the vast majority of grants actually are enough to pay for most of the tuition for those who are very poor. So a lot of the problem actually isn't the poorest among us, it's actually more middle class and others that are having trouble paying these debts. Even people with good jobs who get jobs as they get out of graduate school, it's hard to pay a $200,000 debt. I look around at my staff, most of who are under 40 in Washington here, and they all tell me they still have debts, and many of them have been out of school for quite a while. So people are interested in this. There have been proposals from the other side of the aisle to make it free. Some of us are doubtful of promises of free because we kind of think nothing really in life is free, that it's got to come from somewhere. I've just finished writing a book where we examined some of the free college proposals in Scandinavia. And yes, they have free college, but they have massive taxes on their working class and their middle class to pay for it. They actually do the opposite of what's being proposed here. In Scandinavia, throughout the Scandinavian countries, most of the bulk of the taxes is working class and middle class. 25% sales tax in most of Scandinavia, or a VAT, and 60% income tax starting at $60,000 in Scandinavia. So it isn't really free. You do pay for it in one way or another. The proposal we have is, rather than create a brand new program to try to pay for college education out of the tax base, is to try to get incentives for people to save. The problem with simply adding it on to what we do in Washington is we already do a very crummy job at balancing our budget as it is. With the current spending of what we spend money on, we're about $1 trillion short. And people say, well, whose fault is that, Republicans or Democrats? And I say, yeah. It's really both parties. I mean, both parties want to spend it on different things, but both parties are responsible. There's nobody really innocent of having responsibility up there, or not many. But with this, I've tried to look for a way to try to help people, and I've tried to I try to think of things as a problem and try to figure out how do we get beyond sort of the partisan divide to figure out how we can fix it. And so we looked at something that already exists, that a lot of people already participate in, and tried to say, how could we use something that already exists to help people with college education? And so we decided we'd look at, and other people have looked at this in the past, but we decided we'd look at 401ks and IRAs. People already have the ability to save, and you're able to save, and you don't have to pay tax on that money. Now, ultimately, you do have to pay tax when you take it out when you're retired, but what we're looking at is a way that you could use that money that you put into your 401k and pay for college. And we've already had some of the responses from some of the people who don't like the idea. You always hear from them loudest, and they're saying, oh, it's terrible. People are already not saving enough for their retirement. You're going to take out of their retirement account and pay for college. Well, actually, a lot of the people that are making these complaints are the people who manage money in the stock market and make money by that money staying exactly where it is and aren't very happy about it going to a different purpose. So they're self-interested, is one thing to say. But what I would also say is this. We're not necessarily saying if somebody has like $2,000 in their retirement, take all of that and pay it for college, and that's the answer. What we're saying is you get to pay for college with pre-tax money. So let's say you've graduated and you're an average college student, you have a $29,000 debt. Well, and you're paying, let's say, $100 a month towards your debt. Right now you're paying for that after tax, so you got to earn $150 to pay $100. We're just simply saying take the $100 you're paying for your student debt, put it in your IRA, and then back out of your IRA. Now every $100 you earn actually goes all towards your debt instead of having to pay taxes. So it isn't just about taking money. If you got a bunch of money, it still makes sense to take it out, because if your student loans are 6 or 7% and you're making 2%, it's a better investment just to go ahead and take it out. But the reverse might be true. It might be a good investment to keep it in right now. But nevertheless, if it's a good investment to keep your retirement where it is, take your money you're paying for your debt and funnel it through. But our solution is even bigger than that. Our solution says that each of your parents can give $5,000 and you can. So if you have enough money for college and you're paying for it, which is a lot of the middle class and the upper class, because the poor already have lots of grants. So if you're in that category, you have some money to save. You can do $5,000 for mom, $5,000 for dad, $5,000 for student every year, $15,000. You know, my kids, two of my kids went to UK, and that's pretty close to what their tuition was. I'm thinking about each year was about $15,000, and pay for that with pre-tax. Well, if you plan several years ahead and you can't do $5,000 a year, maybe you do $2,000 a year since the time they're born, or $1,000 a year, but paying for it pre-tax. Now, some will argue, well, this is going to take away money from the Treasury that already has a debt. You're right. If you get a tax deduction, you don't pay as much in taxes, perhaps. However, most of the tax isn't going to occur on your IRA funds until later on, but it could reduce some of the payments to the government. So what I would say is we have to balance that with, right now there's $1.5 trillion worth of student debt. There are some estimates that 40% of it is in danger of default. So you say, well, you might reduce taxes by giving people a deduction, letting them pay college out of their IRA. Yes. But if you do nothing, you might have 40% of the students default, and which is going to be worse. So I think we should do this. But this is the half of the equation that is the cost of college. This does nothing to bring down the cost of college. And that's part of the problem of what we have in Washington. Everybody comes to Washington and says, we need help paying for college, but nobody comes to Washington and says, hey, this is how we bring down the price. And I can tell you it's fairly simple and fairly complicated at the same time to bring down the price of college. It's supply and demand. Supply and demand works everywhere, and it works in colleges. The supply of colleges is fairly fixed. And I have to put your hands over your ears when I talk about you got to allow more colleges, you know, and probably more than more colleges is you'd probably have to allow more online college courses. And universities are starting to do this, but many of the universities have had the same price for online as in-house. There's some, though, that are offering it at a discount. Georgia Tech is a highly esteemed engineering school, and they have an advanced engineering program that is for half the price now. If you take it online, they have students out of England getting, you know, an advanced degree in engineering from them who never show up at all. So there are ways that you can bring price down through online education, and those innovations, I think, are going to happen. So there are two halves of the equations. One is how we meet the cost, and then the other is how we bring down the cost. What we're talking about is just meeting the cost of education. We think it's an innovation at least worth the debate. We're going to have a little discussion, and we'll go down the panel and see what people think, see what questions people have. But then we're also willing to hear from the audience. We're willing to hear criticism as well. We're already getting some in the media criticizing it, and we'll read that. One of the things that people suggested already, I think we're going to do to change the bill, is add grandparents into it. Right now we have parents can help their kids, but do you know who the richest people in our country are? Your grandparents. You get richer each decade. On average, every decade is the older you are, the richer you are. It's not obviously individualized, but it's generalized. That's true. And so a lot of grandparents might have a lot of money in their 401k and might be more inclined to help grandkids if it were tax-free, if they could take it out tax-free.
If you need assistance with federal agencies, please contact our Bowling Green office or visit our website.